Hello, everyone. I think we're going to get underway. I know there's so much visiting to be done here. There's a lot of old friends, and people are coming back from their own version of the pandemic, and there's so much joy in being able to see people in person. So hopefully we'll have time for visiting through the day, but we have a pretty big program and lots of important discussions. So I'm going to be a bit of a dictator, I think, and try to keep us moving. So very excited to see you all here today, and I think we're going to have a really, truly fascinating day. But before we dive in, I would like to start with, we're going to start with a land acknowledgement and a blessing. I want to acknowledge that we are on Treaty 7 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Blackfoot Confederacy, Kainai, Piikani, Siksika, as well as the Tsuut'ina Nation and Stoney Nakoda First Nation. We acknowledge that this territory is home to the Métis Nation of Alberta Region 3 within the historical Northwest Métis homeland. We acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis and Inuit who have lived in and cared for these lands for generations. We make this acknowledgement as an act of reconciliation and gratitude for those whose territory we reside on or are visiting. It is my very great privilege this morning to welcome Elder Doreen Spence, Grandmother Doreen. We are truly honored to have her with us this morning to share a prayer and start us off in a good way. Known as Dr. Grandmother to many, Doreen Spence is a Cree elder who was born and raised on the Good Fish Lake Reservation. She is a member of the Saddle Lake Band, as her father was from Saddle Lake. She very recently was elevated to the as an officer of the Order of Canada, and this is a tremendous honor, and we're so thrilled to have her here with us. She's retired after having spent many years nursing in active treatment hospitals. She's currently an active elder in residence with the Cumming School of Medicine, Indigenous, Local, and Global Health Office, and she mentors students and staff in the Alberta Indigenous Mentorship in Health Innovation Network and at Mount Royal and St. Mary's Universities. Healing and wellness are her lifelong legacy, and she's honored to have been recognized for so many for doing what she is so passionate about, and she's received many honors. These include a Bachelor of Nursing and a Doctorate of Law from Mount Royal University. As I said, she's been appointed to the Order of Canada and elevated as an officer. She's received the Inspire Award and the Alberta Centennial Medal, the Alberta Human Rights Award, the Chief David Crowchild Memorial Award, and the YWCA Women of Distinction Award. And I thought this was particularly remarkable, was one of the 1,000 Peace Women nominated for the 2005 Nobel Peace Prize. So it's my great honor to welcome Grandmother Doreen.
Thank you so much, Corey. Greetings, all my relations. My sacred name is Baskustuan Kihio Isquil Unikaneo, bald eagle woman who leads. And as it was mentioned, I'm from the Saddle Lake Cree Nation. I've been in Calgary since 1970. And when I reflect back to what it was like then, we've come a long ways in terms of human rights. It is one of the most important aspects of my life. It has been my entire life journey to raise awareness for Indigenous peoples. Our issues are environmental issues, because we have a sacred connection to Mother Earth, to Father Sky, to Grandfather Sun, to Grandmother Moon, and to all the relationships, especially the waters, to be able to have clean drinking water for our future generations. And I was always told that we're all relatives as two-legged people. We have relationships no matter where we go. We have this word, it's called Dwahkuhtuwin. It's all about relationships, building relationships, looking at our similarities, our values that we hold so dear in our hearts. And for me, that has been my journey. I want to open up with prayer, just to bless today, to start us off in a good way so that we travel that journey. The old people always used to say, the longest journey you're going to travel is from the head to the heart space. And they were true. It takes a while to get there. So, ahauksina peoke simantu kaksiwatsian ninanaskumt nanoskamiugis kaknuhtawinan tmagnaunan minan maskuatsuin minan nisuin Magna gekachia no aku magna quisto au quais de mio paitic exenuta nascumten. Creator, Great Spirit, Source of life, to Mother, Father, God, I come before you with a humble heart to give you gratitude for the gift of life and for this exciting opportunity to come together and travel that journey from the head to the heart space, to work for the betterment of the whole, to exemplify the teachings every day as we get up and start a new day, to realize that it is just a gift that we're here and that we're compelled to do this good work that you have put before us. We ask that you bring us together with one heart, one mind, and one spirit. And may today be fulfilled with many, many blessings. All my relations. Before I go, I wanted to share a story with you. I think it was back in the early 80s, perhaps. I met Senator Ron Gitter, and he really impacted my life, not only my life, but the lives of many. I remember speaking at a conference, opening up a conference for him, and it was a Dignity Foundation conference. And so following that, he said, we'll keep in touch, Doreen. And then one day, the doorbell rang, and I went to my door. I opened up the door, and there was a huge box. And I looked at this box. It was from Senator Ron Gitter. And I got it all excited. I opened it up, and here was every volume of RCAP, the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples. With that, I took those books out and I read them. I stacked them beside my bed, and every night I'd go in and I'd read them and I'd look at them and make notes. As a result of that, I took a sacred run through Europe to raise awareness of what it was like to be Indigenous in Canada. To be an Indigenous woman, you're the last on the totem pole. And so anyway, to me, it was a start of all the good work. What ended up was at the United Nations in Geneva. And Ron, you were with me at the gates because I could feel your presence. And we marched on to the United Nations, and we spent over 2 decades working there with the Working Group on Indigenous Populations, and we came up with UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. So Ron, you touched many people. Thank you. Hi, hi, all my relations. Oh, have a great day.
There's going to be a lot of tough acts to follow today. Thank you so, so much, Grandmother Doreen. That was a wonderful way to start our work today. And I hope we all take that message of that distance traveling from the head to the heart today, because I think that's a really, really special way for us to approach our work. And of course, I love hearing stories about my father. So thank you for that as well. So I am thrilled to be more formally getting us underway. My name is Corey Gitter. I am one of the directors of the Dignity Forum, and I will be your MC today. I will be directing traffic, so don't hold it against me if I'm a little harsh at times. But I will make an effort to keep us on track and keep us moving, particularly with the weather we're all dealing with today. I definitely want to warmly welcome everybody who's here today, but I did want to point out the members of our board of the Dignity Forum. Of course, we're all here because of Ron Gitter, my father. He is the founder of this organization and its heart, and really the reason so many of us are here. So this is going to be like this all day. So he's our chair and our direction. We also have Karen Roth at the back there, who is one of our board members as well. My aunt and Alice Lamb, who many of you will know is an incredible community builder in Calgary, who also is on our board, and whose organization last night just won a big award at the Chamber of Commerce. The Good Neighbor store won a big award at the Chamber last night, so well done to Alice. I also want to introduce Marissa. Where are you, Marissa? Oh, Marissa's right here. Marissa is our administrator at Dignity Forum, and she's none of us would be here if she hadn't gotten us all organized today. So also, if you have any questions during the day, Marissa's a good person to direct those to. So, as you know, Dignity Forum was founded in large part by my father out of a deep concern out of the weakening of human rights protections in our province and the increase in racism and discrimination that we are seeing all around us. We know that we live in a divisive and polarizing time, and as a result, we are seeing the elevation of some voices fomenting hate and holding in place many of the systems that perpetuate discrimination against racialized people and others in our community. We're here today to provide the opportunity to discuss these issues and, most importantly, talk about solutions and the way forward. As the day progresses, you will see our focus is very much on human rights commissions and the power of education, and we hope that we can build those ideas going forward as well. We have some really incredible speakers here today, and we want to get to hearing from them, so I won't take up too much more time, but I do want to mention that we have some heavy lifting to do today, we have some deep thinking to do today, and it can weigh. So if at any time anyone feels they need to take a break, take a little walk, I would say walk around the block, but maybe not today, please feel free to do so. And if at any time you need any support, I would direct you either to Marissa or Alice, who can help you out. We have bathrooms there, and there are washrooms around outside behind the pool if you need those. We do have Wi-Fi access. The Wi-Fi we've just posted it above the coffee if anybody needs it. It's Marriott Bonvoy _conference, password, all caps, Delta 2022, just so you have that. And you have the program in front of you, so you have a sense of how the day will unfold. We will, of course, be taking breaks throughout. We will provide nourishment and all the coffee and tea that you can drink. And you will also notice on your tables that we've circulated a petition, and we'll talk more about that later in the day, but that is something that we are hoping we can get support for to encourage some fundamental changes to the Alberta Human Rights Commission. So, of course, we hope that you will consider signing that. Okay, well, almost enough from me. I think it's time to move to the introduction of our keynote speaker this morning, Avnish Nanada. So Avnish is a litigator who practices in both Alberta and British Columbia. He received his JD from Osgoode Hall in 2014, was called to the Alberta Bar in 2015, and BC in 2016. He's clearly taken a big interest in social justice for a very long time, having received the Wendy Babcock Social Justice Award at law school, and this commitment has continued throughout his legal practice. He's a regular commentator on anti-racism and is a sessional instructor at the U of A Faculty of Law, teaching environmental and constitutional law. Avnish's bio says he was drawn to the law out of his interest and involvement in social justice activism, which, as I say, he's continued through his legal practice. He frequently acts for parties advancing civil liberties, human rights, Indigenous self-determination. Outside of law, he serves on a number of not-for-profit and community boards and works on a range of social justice and public interest causes. And this, of course, is why we're so excited to have him here today. He's an exciting voice in the legal community and in our province generally, and we're just thrilled to have him here to open us up. So with that, I will turn it over to Avnish.
Hi, everyone. As Corey mentioned, I was born and raised in Edmonton, and I hope you won't hold that against me. But I grew up on the city's south side, including in Millwoods. Millwoods, if folks are aware, is a large working-class immigrant community in the south of Edmonton. And Millwoods is one of Edmonton's arrival neighborhoods. It's one of the neighborhoods that welcomes people new to the city from across Canada and around the world. But the history of Millwoods predates my city, this province, and our country. So Millwoods has been the home of Indigenous nations since time immemorial. And after the signing of Treaty 6, it became the reserve lands of the Papaschase Cree. But after a series of tragedies, beginning in the 1880s, including a concerted effort of the local business and political elite in Edmonton, the Papaschase Cree were stripped of their reserve lands and their banned status under the Indian Act, extinguishing their rights to the lands. Eventually, that land was absorbed into Edmonton and became Millwoods in the 1970s, a city-led development project to expand residential homes in the city. Despite what was done to the Papaschase Cree, however, the presence of the Papaschase Cree is still found in Millwoods. Firstly, because the community is still there. People are still on the land. But also because many of the elementary public schools in Millwoods are named after Cree terms. So Satu, Tapaskin, Meokumin, and Saka, the school I went to. And at Saka, the world was found in its walls. My classmates were from all backgrounds, spoke a variety of languages. I had friends who had immigrated, whose parents had immigrated to Canada from all over the world. Armenia, Ethiopia, Jamaica, India, the Philippines, Papua New Guinea, Pakistan, Peru, Vietnam, and anywhere you could imagine. I had also had friends whose families had been in Canada for many generations. People among them also who held their Baptist or Mormon faith to be integral parts of their identity. I also had a lot of friends who were Blackfoot, Cree, and Métis, and even at that age, we recognized that terms such as Indigenous or Aboriginal were far too broad to accurately capture their heritage. And that was something very special about Saka, at least in my childhood, and I think it was unique for someone like me in Edmonton to experience. But outwardly, Saka School and many schools in Millwoods had a different understanding or perception, right? We went to schools that underperformed, that were in large neighborhoods, working class immigrants. We would consistently be found on the bottom rankings of the Fraser Institute rankings for schools in Alberta. We had students, including myself, with disciplinary issues. We had huge class sizes. We had education disruptions consistently because of chronic underfunding. Many folks were exposed to English for the first time in those classrooms. Many folks did not have supports at home to really succeed academically. But while, for by and large, that was a perception of Saka and its graduates, I think folks were missing something. That diversity that we really embodied, where we came from, that the diverse range of experiences and insights was something special. And even at that age, we understood that we were all different, but that those differences mattered, and that they should be not only recognized, but celebrated. There was a mutual respect that developed among us as children, a curiosity that allowed us to share and learn about our backgrounds in a way that fostered this intimate bond, and it came naturally. That was the most, I think, amazing part of it. A consequence of spending so many hours on the playground or in the classrooms together, building this strong sense of community and understanding, but also this overarching identity that was premised on the notion that we all belonged and that our lives were tethered together. And those years I spent at Saka really shaped my identity and provided a foundation for how I understand the world and this kind of society I want to build. And it's largely because since I left Saka, I have encountered and I entered various academic streams in junior high and high school and post-secondary. But when I left Saka, I found a different world. I found a world that did not often respect, admire, or accommodate difference. Oftentimes, I found a world that was hostile towards difference. And it was soon instilled upon me that in order to succeed in this other realm, that you often had to kind of abandon where you came from and ignore that aspect that made you kind of unique and different. And I hated it. So I kind of brustled up against that for my entire life. And even professionally, I kind of didn't turn back on who I was. And I think that has shaped my journey as a lawyer and just as someone in my community. Eventually, I went to law school at Osgoode Hall Law School in Toronto. I came back to Edmonton to run my own social justice and public interest law firm. And then a few years ago, on a bitterly cold night, November night in Edmonton, if you know what that is, you know how bitterly cold it is. I happened to be back in my old neighborhood, just down the street from Saka School, in the community center in our neighborhood. And I was invited by about 75 mainly racialized, mainly newcomer families living in a low-income housing initiative. And the housing initiative was run by a large international charity, their local branch. And the premise is that they would allow people to afford houses. So it was a home ownership program where if you help build a home, you participate in a volunteer program, you demonstrate that you are capable of home ownership in a sustainable manner, you'll get the house. You'll get the house through a 0% mortgage. And this is something that for these families is the only way for them to obtain a home. It's a foundation for them and their children. So these families built these houses. They had moved in for many years. They completed the program, and they waited there for 2 years to get the houses. And then at that time, the charity said, actually, we can't give you the houses. There's an error that we made. We just can't do it, and you have to leave. And this came as a shock to these families, right? They had put so much of their lives into this program. They had been given a dream, for their families, for their futures, and it was being taken away from them. So I was invited to help see what we could do as a lawyer. And as I was in that community hall, where there's over 300 people, we have multi-generational families, we have elderly, we have children just running around. I looked out in the crowd and I saw myself. My parents could have been in this room easily 30 years ago, right? Same neighborhood, same everything. So I was going to help these people for sure. So we sat down together and we figured out what we could do. And the first thing that we realized is that the land that these homes were built on were from the city of Edmonton, right? This was not purchased by the charity. This was granted to them on the understanding that they would use the land for this initiative. So the first question I had was, well, did you speak with the city councilors or the city administration? And the folks that I was dealing with produced this coiled, thick document or package that had all the agreements, the eviction notices, all the communications and everything itemized and bundled. And they told me that we went to every city councilor's office and we gave it to them. We also gave it to the city admin, but they said it didn't matter. And I was really confused because this seems to be the entire case, the entire story set out perfectly. So I did some investigation, and essentially this is what happened. As soon as the city got it and some city councilors, they called the head of the charity, who they had served on boards with, that they knew personally, and some of the directors, and asked, well, all these families are saying they're going to be evicted. What's happening here? And they were told, the city councilors and admin, that, oh no, these people don't understand what's going on. Nothing's happening. No one is being evicted. It's just a complete misunderstanding. They just don't understand this new program, and it's better for them. That was enough for the city administration and city councilors to completely ignore these families, right? We're talking 75 people, mainly Black, mainly Brown, who are coming to their doorstep in desperate plea for help, and a phone call to someone at the charity was good enough to ignore these people. So that was an avenue that we could not pursue anymore because we couldn't get someone to listen or take us seriously. We went to the courts and we had a similar issue. we went to court to prevent the evictions until we could decide what could happen to the families, whether they can stay or had to leave. And the court found that there appears to be a breach of the contracts that the charity had with my clients. But it was still allowable, like permissible for the charity to evict my clients until we decide, what we could figure out, what the consequence of any breach of the agreements were. And we're talking about during the height of COVID. Many of the families were asking me, what shelter should I move in, because I have no alternative housing option. We were dealing with people in very desperate situations. And after we got the court result, it was revealed that the judge himself was a donor to this charity, something that was not revealed even though we had asked the court not to have someone who had ties with the charity preside over the matter. And at every stage, our institutions failed us. We have these institutions that are meant to at least give a fair shot to people, right? To show up, to act in a dispassionate manner, in an unbiased manner, and make a fair determination based on the facts before them. But we felt as if, the families felt as if they didn't even get a fair hearing or a willingness to hear their side of the story. And the experience unsettled me. There was a clear wrong here, but because I think of their race, their social status, socioeconomic background, it did not seem to matter. They were not believed. In many cases, they were gaslit and marginalized even further by these institutions intended to help them. And as a lawyer and advocate who comes from these communities, from these spaces, but also operates in these institutions, I face the dilemma that many of us face in similar circumstances, right? When you're dealt with this injustice, do you risk going further and calling out the institutions and those responsible for these decisions, undermining your credibility in those institutions, or do you just ignore things and just tell your clients it's done, we tried our best? And this is important, particularly as a lawyer, because my value to the people I represent is my credibility when I go into court and I say, there's a fire. I have to be accepted, I have to be respected, I have to be credible. And if you go around taking on courts, politicians, judges, you lose that credibility right away. So I struggle with it. And I struggle with it because I would get a lot of phone calls from senior members of the bar, other prominent people who come from my background, who understand the predicament I'm in, and were quite clear that you don't want to risk your reputation here. There may have been something really wrong here. It's really unfortunate, but this is the end of the rope. But gladly, it didn't listen to them. Instead, we took a more direct grassroots approach with the families, and we ended up winning. We ended up winning because rather than focus this issue in the institutions that exist that purportedly are there to help us, we went to the public. We made the case in public. We outlined the facts. We were forthright with everything, and people just learning about what was happening kind of recognized the unfairness, recognized that promises were made and were not kept, and demanded the charity do better. Once we did that, things changed immediately. They reversed their position. They let go of people who were kind of the stumbling blocks towards reaching a result, but they put in place systemic changes to prevent something like this from ever happening again. This is not a conversation about what tactics we use, but I really want to instill upon the audience, especially as we go to the panels later today, about our institutions and when they don't fulfill the purpose, what happens, right? In our case, both the political and legal institutions, from the perspective of my families, didn't treat them fairly, didn't give them the fair shot. They were viewed illegitimate in their eyes as a result. And it raises a broader question, which I think is one of the themes of today. How do we ensure our institutions reflect, recognize, represent, and deliver for all people within our community, particularly those on the margins? And that's something I hope you folks will keep in mind as we have these discussions. Thank you so much for the Dignity Forum for having me out. I'm looking forward to the conversations later today. Thank you so much.